Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle into its weight. Allow your breathing to even out. The day has already begun to loosen. There is nowhere left to go. When you are ready, we begin. Tonight's story is called When the Day Softens into Night. The light holds low now, stretched across open ground and thin, amber plains that no longer command the eye. It rests instead, diffused, patient, touching grass and soil without insistence. The warmth it carried through the afternoon has begun its slow release, rising in faint currents through air that has lost its midday pressure. You stand near where field meets a narrow path worn smooth by seasons of footsteps, not sharply divided, just a gentle transition from open land to something slightly more contained. Soil beneath your shoes still holds stored heat, though it rises now in steady, even increments rather than sudden waves. Each small shift of weight registers as brief compression, ground yielding slightly, then returning without sound. A wooden fence post stands at the margin, lining just enough to feel lived in. Its surface is smoothed along the top curve from hands that have rested there repeatedly, rougher lower down where weather has lifted grain over years. A shallow scrape runs along one side, old, edges softened by time, and rain, the kind of mark left when metal once caught and slid before being righted. Your palm rests there briefly. Wood carries residual warmth, steady beneath skin, unhurried in how it shares what it has held. Beyond the post, the field opens wider. Grass bends in small, uneven patterns where breezes earlier passed. Blades catch lowering light at different angles, pale gold where rays still touch directly, deeper ochre where shadow begins to gather at bases. No single blade draws focus. The field reads as whole, continuous. A breeze arrives from the west, thin, measured. It moves across open ground without haste, carrying dry scent of sun-baked soil now cooling, layered beneath with faint mineral traces from stone and root. Air brushes lightly along forearms, neck not cold, simply easing. Temperature no longer varies sharply between center and edge. It levels gradually across the space. You step forward along the worn path. The path does not feel like a line drawn across the field. It feels like a habit the land has learned, a slightly firmer strip where earth has been pressed and repressed into quiet agreement. The edges are not clean. Grass leans in and out of it as though the field never fully surrendered and the path never demanded that it should. Each footfall meets the ground with a soft, contained response. There is no hollow sound, no sharp gravel, just the muted compression of soil that has carried many evenings like this. The weight of your body moves forward in small, ordinary transfers, heel, then midfoot, then toe, and each shift feels uncomplicated, like the body remembering something it already knows how to do. A few stones sit half buried along the center of the track, rounded and dull in the lowering light. They are not obstacles. They are simply part of the surface. Your feet adjust without thinking, a slight change of angle, a small lift of the toes, the kind of quiet coordination that happens best when no one is watching it too closely. On either side, the grass has begun to settle into the cooler air. Earlier, it held itself upright, full of sun's stored energy. Now it leans more easily, blades softening in attitude as the day releases its grip. When a breeze crosses, the movement is shallow and cohesive, as though the whole field is exhaling at once. A faint scent comes up as you walk, warm earth turning cooler, dry grass giving way to something deeper. There is the mineral trace of stone beneath soil, and the faint, clean edge of plants that have spent the day holding light. It is not a strong smell. It is just enough to register when you let your attention drift down toward it. Farther ahead, the field begins to slope almost imperceptibly, the horizon changing by degrees rather than steps. The path follows this shift without insisting on its own straightness. It curves slightly, as though it is more interested in easy ground than in efficiency. You follow that curve, and the movement feels gentle in the joints, knees, and ankles, taking the contour without complaint. A small cluster of wild plants sits close to the path's edge, low, spiky stems, and a scatter of tiny seed heads that catch what remains of the light. Their shapes are delicate but not fragile. They have held themselves through the full heat of the afternoon, and now they simply exist unhurried as evening gathers around them. A moth drifts through the air briefly, pale against the darkening grass. Its movement is not purposeful. It loops once, then veers away, caught more by currents than by direction. It disappears into the dimness without leaving a sense of departure, as though it had never been separate from the air in the first place. Somewhere behind you, a sound occurs, a small, distant settling. It could be a door closing. It could be a gate. It could be nothing more than the day's last activity completing itself. The sound arrives already softened, and it dissolves without requiring interpretation. The path grows slightly narrower as it approaches the trees. You can see the darker band of their trunks now, and the canopy above them, not a solid roof, but an interlacing of leaves and branches that turns the last light into a thin, patterned veil. The open field still holds a faint warmth. The trees look cooler by comparison, as though they are already living in the night that is coming. Your arms hang naturally at your sides, your hands open and close once, not from restlessness, but from simple sensation, fingers acknowledging air, acknowledging that the temperature is changing. Skin feels the shift in small ways, the backs of the hands cooling first, then the wrists, then the forearms. Breath moves through you without effort. The inhale arrives and spreads low, then eases upward. The exhale releases without push, as if the body has decided it can take its time. There is no need to lengthen it deliberately. It lengthens on its own because nothing in you needs urgency here. The trees draw closer, and you begin to notice the change in sound. The open field held space differently. Sounds traveled farther, thinned, then vanished. Near the trees, the air feels slightly more contained. A faint rustle in the canopy becomes clearer. Your footfalls feel quieter, more absorbed. Even your breathing seems softer, not because it changes, but because the world around it is settling into a different kind of hush. The last of the sun's color lies low now, stretched thin across the far edge of the land. It no longer shines, it rests. And as you walk, you feel the body making its own small internal shift, not excitement, not tiredness, just a gentle recalibration, as if the day is being set down one layer at a time. Ground here feels firmer, packed by footsteps over long seasons. Each placement of foot meets quiet, contained response, brief sound of soul against earth, then silence. Path curves gently toward a small cluster of trees at far side of clearing. Branches filter remaining direct light, casting soft, shifting patterns across grass. Leaves darken at edges, green yielding to deeper tone as illumination thins. A low wooden gate stands between path and enclosed space beyond. Latch lifts easily under fingers, soft metallic click, not sharp, just present. Gate swings inward on hinges, carrying quiet, familiar groan, small, self-contained sound of metal, and wood settling back after many openings. A small worn patch on the top rail shows where hands have gripped repeatedly, smooth, slightly discolored, edges rounded by time. You step through. Inside the gate, the air changes in a way that is immediate, but not dramatic. The temperature is only slightly cooler, yet it feels distinctly different, as though the shade has its own steadiness, its own settled pace. Light is thinner here, filtered into softer layers, and the ground holds a different texture beneath your feet. The path becomes less of a track and more of a suggestion, worn between roots that rise and sink under the soil like quiet forms beneath a blanket. Your steps adjust again, instinctive and calm. The soles of your shoes meet patches of packed earth, then leaf litter, then earth again, each surface receiving your weight in its own quiet way. Leaves lie scattered across the ground, not thick enough to become slippery, just enough to create a faint paper-soft sound when you step. Some are crisp at the edges. Others have already softened, bending rather than cracking. Their colors are muted now, deep brown, shadowed gold, the last traces of green holding on in places where the light still touches. A small trunk stands close to the path with bark that catches your attention for a moment. The surface is ridged, patterned, and cool in tone. You do not need to touch it to know what it would feel like: slightly rough, slightly damp at the deeper grooves where evening moisture begins to gather first. The mind registers it and moves on, content with the impression. Above, the canopy is not uniform. Some branches overlap densely, creating darker pockets where the sky disappears. Other gaps remain open, letting through a diluted wash of the remaining light. The pattern of it shifts subtly as leaves move in small currents of air. It is not wind exactly, more like the environment finishing its adjustments for the night. A bird settles somewhere deeper in the trees. You hear a soft sound, a brief flutter, then stillness. It does not call out. It simply finds its place and becomes quiet. The trees hold that quiet easily, as though they were made for it. Your shoulders respond to the cooler air by lowering slightly. Not from tension, but from comfort, the way the body settles when it senses there is no need to stay braced. The neck loosens. The jaw unclenches in small increments that you might not notice unless you pause and look for them. The path bends again, guiding you toward a clearing inside the trees where the bench waits. The bench is not the only thing there. It is simply the most intentional object in the space, placed as if someone, long ago, decided that this was where a person should be able to sit and watch the day finish. As you walk, you notice the way sound behaves under the canopy. In the open field, each small noise thinned quickly into distance. Here, noises are closer. They do not travel far. The environment holds them and then lets them go. Your footfalls do not echo. They sink into leaf and earth and fade. A faint scent of wood rises in the cooler air, not smoke, not resin, just the clean, grounded smell of bark and dampening soil. It feels older than the field, as though it has been here longer, and is less impressed by the day's changes. It remains steady while evening arrives. You pass a low stone at the edge of the path, half hidden by leaves. It has a smooth top where rain has worn it over time. For a moment, your attention rests on it, the way it sits there without purpose, without needing to be noticed. Then your gaze drifts onward again. Breath continues evenly. Inhale arrives low, steady. Exhale releases without hurry. The pause between them opens naturally, and it feels slightly wider here beneath the trees, perhaps because everything around you is quieter and more contained. The body notices that containment and responds by easing into it. You begin to hear insects more clearly now, not loud, not insistent, just a faint layer of life in the undergrowth. A steady weaving tone that does not demand attention, but sits beneath everything like a soft, continuous thread. Your hands hang at your sides, fingers loose. You may brush them lightly against your clothing once as you walk, feeling fabric move under the shift of your stride. The sensation is small, ordinary, and grounding. The bench comes into clearer view. Its lines are simple. Wood has darkened over time. The edges are worn softly, not sharply. It looks as though it belongs here not as a decoration, but as a practical companion to the evening. You approach without speed. There is no need to arrive quickly. The path and the trees have already done their work, slowing you, cooling you, quieting your senses in small, cumulative ways. By the time you reach the bench, the day already feels further away, not because you pushed it aside, but because the environment helped you set it down. Inside, trees gather closer, branches interlacing overhead to create softer canopy. Ground beneath dotted with fallen leaves, not thickly, just enough to shift faintly underfoot with papery rustle. Air cools noticeably here, settling along skin in even layers. No draft moves, only gradual redistribution. The path narrows further, guiding toward small wooden bench positioned beneath broadest tree. Bench faces open horizon, placed with quiet intention. Surface shows wear smooth in central areas from repeated sitting, grain rising slightly near edges where hands have rested. Faint groove runs along one armrest, old, softened by time and touch, kind of mark left when someone traced wood absent-mindedly during long pauses. You lower yourself onto bench. The moment of sitting carries a quiet finality to it, not dramatic, not heavy, simply the body moving from motion into rest without resistance. The bench receives your weight evenly. There is a small, contained shift in the wood, a soft flex, then steadiness. The sound is minimal, not a creak that draws attention, just a subtle acknowledgement that something has settled into place. Your back meets the support without needing adjustment. The angle is forgiving. It does not demand posture. It allows the spine to find its own length, shoulders easing back and down as though they have been waiting for permission. Your feet remain planted lightly on the ground for a moment. The earth beneath them feels firm but not rigid. There is no urgency in your legs now. The readiness that existed while walking dissolves quickly. Ankles soften, knees unlock slightly. The body recognizes that movement is no longer required. Your hands come to rest where they land, perhaps on the armrests, perhaps loosely along your thighs. The wood beneath your palms holds the faintest memory of the day's warmth. Not heat, just residual gentleness. It meets your skin and remains steady. Breathing shifts almost immediately. Inhale arrives a little fuller than before. Exhale releases more completely. And the pause after it opens wider than it did while you were standing. The body seems to recognize this posture as something safe. Your gaze remains outward for a moment longer, through the trees toward the field beyond. The open land feels slightly more distant from here, as though you have stepped into a quieter chamber within the evening. The canopy above diffuses the remaining light into thinner strands, and the horizon beyond the branches softens at its edges. A faint line of amber lingers low across the field, though it has lost its brightness. It no longer shines, it rests. The sky above it deepens gradually toward indigo, the transition, so smooth that no single point marks the change. Your shoulders drop another small degree, not dramatically, just enough that you notice less effort in holding them. The muscles along the upper back release in increments too subtle to count. The neck lengthens slightly as tension recedes. The jaw loosens without instruction. Teeth rest apart. The tongue settles easily. The bench beneath you feels more anchored now. Its legs press into the soil. The ground presses back. There is no instability in the structure, no wobble, just a quiet agreement between wood and earth that has held many evenings like this. A small sound occurs somewhere above, a leaf shifting, then stopping. The canopy does not move as a whole, it responds in fragments. One branch adjusts, another remains still. The air carries no real wind, only redistribution. Your elbows feel heavier where they rest. The weight of your arms becomes more noticeable, not as strain, but as surrender. Gravity feels cooperative rather than demanding. It takes what you offer and holds it without argument. Breath continues. Inhale, steady. Exhale, longer. Pause. The pause feels less like waiting and more like resting. Somewhere beyond the trees, a distant hum passes briefly across the field, perhaps a vehicle, perhaps something mechanical completing its day. The sound arrives softened by distance and dissolves before direction forms. The quiet that follows feels thicker, not heavy, just fuller. You may notice the subtle texture of the wood beneath your forearms now. The grain rises slightly near the edges. The center is smoother from years of contact. It is not polished. It is worn in the quiet way surfaces become worn when they are used gently and often. Your hips settle deeper into the bench. The small adjustments that happen when first sitting grow less frequent. The body finds a configuration that feels complete and stops searching for improvement. Breathing smooths again. Inhale spreads low through the ribs. Exhale eases down the spine and into the abdomen. The pause opens and holds without tension. From this position, the field beyond reads as tone rather than detail. Individual blades of grass have blended into a darker sweep. The path you walked is no longer distinct. It has merged back into the land. Above, the first faint star becomes visible. Not bright, not commanding, just present, then another spaced widely. They do not appear suddenly, they gather quietly. Your eyelids blink more slowly now. Each reopening reveals the same arrangement: trees steady, sky deepening, field quiet. The steadiness of that repetition becomes soothing in itself. Your hands loosen further. Fingers uncurl slightly. Palms rest without shape that matters. The warmth from earlier walking has dissipated. Skin meets air evenly. There is no sharp difference between inner warmth and outer coolness now. The temperature has stabilized. A subtle heaviness spreads through the thighs and calves, not fatigue, just the absence of readiness. The body understands that nothing requires it to rise again. Breath continues. Inhale, exhale, pause. The pause widens by a fraction. The bench no longer feels like an object separate from you. It feels like an extension of ground. Its steadiness has transferred into your awareness. Support becomes assumed rather than actively sensed. The insect layer in the grass becomes more audible as other sounds recede. It forms a low, continuous weave beneath the evening, not individual calls, but one soft thread of sound. It does not demand attention. It simply exists. Your shoulders settle another small degree. The space between your shoulder blades softens. The collarbones widen. The chest no longer feels lifted for posture. It rises only when breath moves through it. The sky deepens further into indigo. The last thin trace of amber along the horizon dims quietly, not extinguished, just absorbed into the larger color surrounding it. You remain seated, fully supported, fully aligned. The body no longer searches for adjustment. Breath moves in unforced arcs. Inhale, quiet. Exhale, smooth, pause. And with each pause, the mind finds it easier to rest without organizing what comes next. The evening no longer feels like something arriving. It feels established. The clearing has reached a point where nothing more needs to change for it to be complete. From where you sit, the horizon beyond the trees appears as one continuous band. The earlier color has faded fully now, leaving only a uniform depth that stretches without interruption. There is no longer a brighter edge to follow. The canopy above holds its shape steadily. Leaves remain where they are. The earlier small movements have quieted. Even the faint redistributions of air have slowed. Your body responds to that steadiness in small, practical ways. The weight through your hips settles evenly. The lower back releases the last subtle brace it had been holding. The abdomen softens without instruction. Arms feel heavier now, not tired, simply surrendered to gravity. Elbows rest with no sense of suspension. Hands lie open without intention. Air moves quietly through you again. The ribs widen just enough. The release follows more completely. Afterward, there is a still point that feels natural and undisturbed. Your gaze may remain outward, or it may begin to drift unfocused. The difference matters less now. The clearing no longer requires observation. It continues on its own. A distant sound occurs far beyond the field, too faint to name. It travels across the open land, arrives softened, and disappears before direction can form. Silence resumes without effort. The insect layer beneath the trees becomes smoother, less a collection of separate tones, and more a single, continuous undercurrent. It does not dominate. It does not fade. It simply holds the space evenly. Your shoulders remain lowered. The space between them feels wide. The neck stays unengaged. The head balances without assistance. There is no forward lean, no pull backward, just equilibrium. Air flows again. Inward movement minimal, outward release longer. The pause afterward expands slightly, and you rest inside that pause without needing to extend it. Your eyelids blink slowly. When they reopen, the arrangement of the clearing remains exactly as before, tree line steady, sky deep, field absorbed into tone. The steadiness becomes a reassurance in itself. Nothing is shifting quickly here. Nothing requires correction. The bench beneath you feels less like wood and more like continuity and extension of ground. Its edges have faded from awareness. Stability remains. Your legs feel grounded and uncomplicated. The small readiness that once lived in the calves has dissolved entirely. Ankle joints feel loose. Knees feel neutral. No part of you anticipates standing. Another subtle movement of air passes through the canopy, brief, self-contained. A single leaf adjusts, then stillness returns fully. Air moves through your body again. The movement feels softer than before. The release afterward seems to lengthen without effort. The pause holds. Time begins to feel less structured. There are no visual cues marking progress. No change in color left to follow. No temperature shift remaining. Moments feel layered rather than sequential. Your jaw remains loose. Teeth rest apart. The tongue lies low and unmoving. Even the small muscles behind the eyes have quieted. The darkness above you has become uniform. The stars remain spaced widely, neither brightening nor multiplying quickly. They hold their positions without urgency. Air flows again, barely lifting the chest. The release settles downward fully. The stillness afterward feels slightly deeper. The clearing now feels complete, not waiting for anything else to happen. The sense of evening becoming night has finished. What remains is simply night. Your attention narrows gently toward what is closest. The steady contact beneath you, the quiet movement through the ribs, the soft field of darkness behind your gaze. The insect layer feels farther away now, not because it has moved, but because your awareness has moved inward. Nothing in your body signals adjustment. No joint hints at discomfort. No muscle prepares to engage. Everything feels aligned without supervision. Air continues its restrained rhythm. The inward motion smaller. The outward release smoother. The pause afterward slightly longer. You remain seated, fully supported, fully balanced. The sense of being in a specific place begins to soften. Tree, field, bench, these become impressions rather than distinct objects. What remains most clearly is steadiness. Another quiet cycle completes itself. The stillness afterward feels established, not growing, not changing, simply present. You do not track how long it lasts. You rest within it. There is nothing left in the clearing that needs attention. Nothing approaching, nothing departing, only this even, unbroken condition. And you remain here, held gently within it as the quiet continues without effort in every direction. Nothing presses forward, nothing pulls back. The evening continues its slow settling around you. And you remain here, received by the bench, anchored by the earth beneath it, as the night gathers evenly and without urgency in every direction. Wood receives weight evenly, giving slightly at center then steadying. Backrest aligns with spine without correction. Forearms settle along arms, following shallow curves worn lighter by years of similar rests. Bench holds temperature close to air now, neither warm nor cool, simply present. From here, horizon stretches wide, framed by branches. Light filters through leaves in thinning patterns. Gold near edge has deepened toward amber, then softened further into muted rose. Higher up, blue gathers, layered, even. Shift happens without announcement, color simply settling into itself. Distant door closes somewhere within town beyond field. Sound arrives small, carried on thinning air, then dissolves. Car passes far off, low hum fades before direction forms. These are not interruptions. They belong to same slow turning. Your breathing finds rhythm without direction. The pattern settles on its own. Air moves inward quietly, expanding the lower ribs in a small, steady arc. It releases without effort, smoothing downward through the center of the body before dissolving into stillness. The space that follows feels wider than it did while you were standing. Not empty, just unoccupied. Your shoulders respond first, easing another fraction lower. The muscles that once held them in subtle readiness step back from their work. There is no collapse, only redistribution. The weight of your arms becomes more noticeable against the bench. Elbows rest without pressure. Forearms lie along the wood in a way that feels unplanned but exact. The canopy above makes a brief, delicate sound, a leaf shifting against another leaf. The movement is isolated. It completes itself without prompting further motion. Silence returns without interruption. From here, the field beyond appears less detailed than before. Edges soften. The path you walked no longer distinguishes itself from the surrounding grass. It has blended back into the land as though it were only temporary. Air moves again, inward, outward. The pause between cycles feels steadier now, as though it has discovered its natural length. Your jaw loosens a little more. The tongue settles low. The small muscles beneath the ears release tension that had gone unnoticed until it faded. The bench feels anchored, not just placed on the earth, but integrated into it. Its legs press downward. The ground presses upward. The stability transfers subtly into your awareness. A distant sound arrives across the open field, faint and rounded. Perhaps a vehicle far beyond the horizon. It does not linger. It touches the edge of perception and dissolves before direction forms. The quiet that follows feels complete. Your gaze softens. You no longer examine the clearing in detail. Trees become silhouette, grass becomes tone, sky becomes depth rather than color. The effort of focusing reduces without instruction. Air flows again through the body. The movement feels smaller now, less pronounced, more background than foreground. With each release, the torso settles a fraction deeper against the backrest. The spine lengthens without lifting. The chest no longer holds itself open. It opens only when air arrives. Your hands grow heavier, fingers loosen. The small warmth in the palms fades into neutrality. A faint dampness begins to gather in the air, not visible, not cold, simply softer. It smooths the edges of sensation. Skin registers it without reaction. Above, another star appears, not brighter than the first, just steady. The sky no longer shifts dramatically. Its change is incremental, nearly imperceptible. The indigo deepens by degrees too small to measure. Air moves again. In, out, the pause lingers, and you find yourself resting more inside that pause than inside the movement itself. Your thighs feel grounded against the bench. Calves relax fully. The subtle readiness that belongs to standing has disappeared completely. No muscle anticipates rising. No joint signals adjustment. The insect layer becomes more uniform now, less individual, more continuous. It forms a soft ribbon beneath the clearing. Not loud, not sparse, just present. Your eyelids blink once slowly. When they reopen, nothing has changed. The steadiness of that sameness becomes reassuring. Air passes through again, barely lifting the ribs. The release that follows feels longer. The stillness afterward feels easier to inhabit. The bench beneath you is no longer a surface to notice. It becomes assumed support. The exact texture of the wood fades from awareness. Stability remains. Your shoulders sink another subtle degree. The collarbones widen slightly. The upper back releases any remaining hold. The body begins to feel organized by gravity rather than by intention. Air moves again, quietly, evenly. The pause holds. Time begins to lose its clear divisions. Without shifts in light or sudden sound, moments no longer separate distinctly from one another. They rest side by side without urgency. The faint light far beyond the trees remains steady. It neither brightens nor dims. It simply stays. Your attention narrows gently toward what is closest, the steady contact beneath you, the subtle movement through the ribs, the quiet depth behind the eyes. The clearing feels contained without feeling enclosed, open above, stable beneath, calm around. Air continues its restrained rhythm, each inward movement smaller than the last, each outward release more complete. The pause after it widens again. Your head balances effortlessly. There is no forward tilt, no backward strain. Neck muscles remain quiet. The idea of posture fades. The body holds itself without supervision. Another slight stir in the canopy completes itself overhead. It is brief. Then stillness returns. Your hands rest without definition now. You may no longer register where one finger lies in relation to another. Weight remains. Shape matters less. Air flows again. Subtle, even. The release seems to travel downward and disappear into the quiet beneath you. The pause afterward feels deeper, not dramatic, just established. Nothing in the clearing asks for attention now. No new sounds, no shift in color, no movement that requires tracking. You remain seated, supported, aligned. The rhythm inside you continues on its own, unobserved except when it brushes the edge of awareness. And with each quiet cycle, the need to monitor anything at all diminishes further. Inhale arrives low, spreading through ribs. Exhale releases evenly, lengthening slightly. Pause opens naturally between them, spacious, unforced. Bench supports without effort. Shoulders ease downward. Neck loosens. Body adjusts alignment in small, nearly invisible ways, hips settling, spine lengthening, weight redistributing through contact points until no single place carries more than it should. Light continues lowering across open ground beyond trees. Shadows lengthen at base of trunks, pooling gently, merging. Grass that earlier caught individual strands of sun now reads as unified tone, deeper where shade gathers, lighter where last rays touch. Breeze moves through canopy overhead. Leaves respond in layered murmur, not sudden, not uniform. Some shift, others remain still. Sound rises briefly, then settles back into quiet. Air brushes across forearms again, cooler now, but even. Temperature no longer varies sharply between skin and surrounding space. It levels. You notice small mark near left hand on bench arm, shallow indentation, smoothed by time, perhaps from ring once worn repeatedly or thumbnail resting in thought. Fingertip passes over it once, registering smoothness, then returns to rest. Mark remains quiet evidence of earlier pauses. Sky deepens another degree. Indigo gathers at highest point, carrying faint violet beneath it. Horizon band thins further, rose dissolving into muted tone. No sharp boundary forms. Color simply integrates. Inhale widens slightly through back. Exhale settles downward, releasing without hurry. Space between cycles holds comfortably. Single bird crosses overhead, wings moving in steady arcs. Silhouette darkens briefly against paling sky, then passes beyond tree line. Movement leaves no trace beyond faint air displacement. Bench beneath you feels more anchored now. Wood no longer registers as separate surface. It extends into ground, into root system below, into quiet stability of earth that has held this place through many evenings. Your weight rests within that continuity, not pressing down, simply aligning. Distant sounds thin further. Low hum, perhaps wind along far road, arrives rounded and already fading. It brushes edge of hearing, then dissolves into layered quiet. Insects' rhythm emerges more clearly in its absence, low, continuous weaving through grass without dominating. You allow gaze to soften. Details blur not from fatigue, but from reduced necessity. Trees become broader shape. Field becomes tone. Sky becomes depth. Eye rests rather than searches. Shoulders lower another small degree. Jaw softens. Small muscles around eyes uncoil. Body finds deeper alignment without instruction. Light near horizon has nearly withdrawn. What remains is faint amber trace, thinning into indigo that now holds most of sky. Stars begin to appear not suddenly, but gradually, one faint point after another, spaced widely. Bench supports without effort. Ground beneath it remains steady. Night gathers around everything evenly: air, grass, trees, sky, without preference or exclusion. The horizon line has softened further now, almost indistinguishable from the sky it once met so sharply. What remains of amber has thinned to a narrow whisper along the lowest edge, dissolving into the deepening indigo that claims the rest of the expanse. The change is so gradual that it feels less like movement and more like memory fading, light not disappearing, but simply becoming quieter, less insistent, more willing to rest within the surfaces it once illuminated. You shift your weight very slightly on the bench, not to adjust, just to feel how the wood responds. A small creak travels through the frame, low and brief, then quiets. The sound feels intimate in the widening hush, like the bench acknowledging your presence before returning to its own stillness. Along the outer edge of the seat, a faint worn spot catches your eye, smoother than the rest, slightly discolored from years of hands or coats brushing the same place when someone rose or sat again. The mark is subtle, almost invisible unless the last traces of light find it at just the right angle. Your fingertip drifts over it once, registering the difference in texture, then returns to rest. The spot remains, quiet proof of other evenings spent here in similar pause. A mug rests near your knee, settled on the bench slat where the wood is flatter. It doesn't steam much now. The warmth gathers close to the ceramic instead of lifting into the air. When you bring it up, heat meets your palms first, then spreads slowly into fingers that are already cooling in the night. The scent is faint and plain, something herbal or simply hot water that has learned the shape of a leaf. You take a small sip, no urgency. The temperature is gentle enough that you don't need to wait between sips. The mug returns to its place with a quiet, contained sound, ceramic against wood, then becomes still again. A little time passes without being counted. The surface of the tea grows smoother as it cools, reflecting less light each minute. The warmth remains, but it stays closer to the cup now, no longer rising. Your hands rest around it for a moment longer, then release, leaving a small impression of heat behind on your skin. Air cools another small degree along your wrists and the backs of your hands. It settles there evenly, no pockets of chill, no sudden draft, just a gentle evening equilibrium that the body meets without resistance. Skin softens in response, tension that once lived unnoticed now releasing in increments too small to name. Your breathing continues its unhurried pattern. Far across the field, a small point of light appears where none was earlier. Not bright, not calling attention, just a steady lantern glow set low, closer to the ground than to the sky. It doesn't move. It simply exists, a calm marker that the evening has reached its final routines. The light does not change the darkness around it. It doesn't push back the night. It sits within it, contained and patient, like a cup left on a table after the room has quieted. You don't need to watch it. Your gaze can pass over it once, register its steadiness, then return to whatever is nearest, the dark sweep of the field, the canopy line, the bench beneath you. The lantern remains where it is, unhurried, doing nothing beyond staying lit. The field beyond the trees has become more tone than detail. Grass no longer separates into individual blades. It reads as a single, dark sweep bending faintly where the last breeze passed. Trees merge into broader silhouette, branches no longer distinct, only a continuous line against the sky. The eye no longer seeks separation, it accepts the whole. A distant sound drifts across, perhaps gravel shifting under a late footstep, perhaps something smaller moving through underbrush. It arrives rounded, already fading, and dissolves before direction can form. The quiet that follows feels fuller for having received it. You remain seated within that fullness, breath steady, weight supported, night gathering evenly around every surface and every small pause. Nothing presses forward, nothing pulls back. Only this gentle, patient continuation as the last of the day's light softens completely into the hour that follows. The bench edge cools a little more, and with that cooling comes a new texture, barely there at first. A thin dampness gathering on the outer slat where the night air settles longest. Not wet enough to change your clothes, just enough to feel different under the pad of a fingertip if you notice it. In the grass beyond the trees, the same change is happening more quietly. Blades that were dry at dusk now hold a faint sheen. The sheen doesn't sparkle. There is not enough light for that. It simply softens the surface, turning everything slightly less sharp, slightly more blended. The evening becomes gentler like this, not by losing sound or losing shape, but by gaining a layer that smooths the world's edges. The ground holds its steadiness. The sky holds its depth. And the night adds this final, quiet finish. The final trace of amber thins further, then slips quietly from the horizon without ceremony. What remains is an even spread of indigo, deep and unbroken, stretching from tree line to highest sky. There is no moment of disappearance, only the gradual understanding that the color has finished changing. The field beyond the trees no longer offers detail. It rests as a single dark sweep, edges absorbed into the ground beneath it. The trunks that once showed texture now stand as quiet silhouettes. Branches merge into broader forms. The eye no longer separates one shape from another. It accepts the whole. A single star brightens slightly overhead, not suddenly, just enough to be noticed. Then another appears farther to the west, spaced widely, unhurried. They do not crowd the sky. They take their places without announcement. The insect's rhythm settles into something steadier now, less scattered than before. What was once many small sounds weaving through grass becomes a low, continuous layer beneath everything else. Your breathing settles into its own quiet rhythm, steady without needing guidance. The bench beneath you feels fully integrated into the ground now. There is no sense of it as object, only support. Your weight rests evenly. Shoulders remain lowered. The small adjustments that once occurred without notice have grown infrequent. The body has found its balance and no longer searches for improvement. A distant sound carries briefly across the open land, perhaps a vehicle far beyond the tree line. It arrives softened by distance, already fading. It completes itself and leaves no echo. The dark deepens another small degree, not by growing dense, but by becoming more complete. Your hands grow stiller against the wood. Fingers rest without curling. The skin across your wrists cools evenly in the night air, no sharper at one place than another. The temperature feels settled now, as though it has reached its final position for the evening. You allow your gaze to soften further. Edges of the stars soften slightly now, their light diffusing into the darker field around them. Above, the sky no longer feels like a surface stretched overhead, but a quiet depth extending outward in all directions. Along the perimeter of the clearing, tree lines merge into a single unbroken contour, less a collection of trunks and branches than a steady horizon of shadow. Your breathing lengthens slightly on the exhale, widening on its own without effort or direction. Somewhere close by, leaves shift once in a small current of air. The sound is brief, a single murmur, then stillness returns. The clearing feels contained without feeling enclosed. Space remains open above, steady around, grounded beneath. Nothing new emerges now. Color has finished shifting. Movement has quieted. What remains is simple continuation. You remain seated within it, body aligned, the night now fully present in every direction. And the hour moves forward without asking anything more of you. That contour remains steady as your gaze rests without effort. Nothing here seeks attention. What earlier held shape now settles into tone, grass as darkened sweep, branches as layered silhouette, sky as wide and even expanse. A small change in air pressure passes almost unnoticed. It is not wind, not quite movement, more a redistribution, as if the space between ground and canopy has finished adjusting to the absence of daylight. The coolness feels complete now. There is no further drop waiting. Skin accepts the temperature fully, without flinch or correction. Your breathing continues in its own rhythm. It is quieter now, less defined at the edges. Air enters and leaves without announcing itself. Your chest rises gently beneath fabric, then lowers. The pause between breaths feels broader than before, not held, simply spacious. Nothing urges the next breath forward. It arrives when it arrives. In the distance, one insect shifts pitch slightly, then returns to the steady underlying tone. The change is small enough that it feels like texture rather than event. Sound does not puncture the quiet, it threads through it. Your jaw loosens another small degree. Teeth rest without contact. Tongue lies easily in the floor of the mouth. Muscles behind the eyes release their last small effort of focus. The bench remains unmoving beneath you, its support, so consistent that it no longer registers as sensation. Weight has distributed evenly across hips and thighs. There is no single point demanding adjustment. The spine holds its shape without guidance. Shoulders remain wide and lowered. Above, the stars grow fractionally clearer as your eyes stop trying to interpret them. Some appear brighter only because attention is softer. Others seem to fade into the background, though they remain exactly where they were. Perception changes, the sky does not. A faint scent of earth rises from the ground, cooler now, less sun-warmed than earlier. It carries a trace of dry grass and bark, subtle and steady. You notice it only because nothing else competes for attention. Time feels wider, not slower, not faster, just less segmented. You are no longer marking moments by change. The field has become a single, quiet presence beyond the trees. No edges call for definition. The path you walked earlier has fully blended into the surrounding ground. Even if you stood now, it would take effort to distinguish where one surface becomes another. But you remain seated. There is no need to move. Breath continues. Air enters softly, filling the lower ribs first before expanding upward. It leaves in an even stream, longer now than it was before. The pause after the exhale feels generous, almost as though the body is content to remain empty for a moment longer than necessary. Somewhere very far off, a dog barks once. The sound carries thinly through the open land, already fading as it reaches you. It occurs, then dissolves into the layered hush. It absorbs it easily. Your hands rest heavier against the wood. Fingers no longer hold shape, they drape naturally. Warmth from your palms meets the cooling surface without contrast. Sensation feels muted, not absent, just unimportant. The sky deepens by another shade. Indigo settles into something darker, more uniform. The faintest residual glow near the horizon has vanished entirely. There is no gradient left to follow, only steady night. Your eyelids may feel slightly weighted now, not closing, just softer at the edges. Blinking happens less frequently. When it does, it is slow and unhurried. Each reopening reveals the same quiet arrangement: trees steady, sky open, stars scattered. The insect layer grows smoother. Earlier, individual pulses could be distinguished. Now they merge into one continuous ribbon of sound. It sits beneath the night like a foundation tone, consistent and unobtrusive. The body handles itself. There is no deliberate effort behind it. The body simply recognizes that nothing remains to be done. Support feels layered and steady, extending downward into the earth without needing to be named. You rest within that sequence of support without needing to think about it. A final, faint stirring of leaves passes overhead, barely enough to register as movement. It completes itself in a single, soft murmur. Then stillness resumes. The clearing feels settled now. Not waiting, not shifting, just present. Your shoulders sink a fraction deeper. The small muscles along your back, those that once kept posture upright, ease further. Alignment remains, but it no longer feels maintained. It simply exists. Breathing moves quietly through you, the release settling into a brief, spacious stillness before the next cycle begins. Stars remain steady overhead. Some seem to shimmer slightly, though nothing around you moves. It is only distance and atmosphere altering how their light arrives. You do not follow the shimmer. You let it be. Darkness now holds equal depth in every direction. There is no brighter edge left to track. Your body feels heavier in a comfortable way, not weighed down, simply grounded. Hips settle. Heels rest without tension. Hands remain open. The moment remains balanced, neither urging nor retreating. The hour has fully arrived, and you remain here supported while the night completes itself around you in quiet, even layers. Night is complete now. There is no trace of color left at the horizon. The sky holds a uniform depth, wide and unbroken. Stars remain scattered without pattern, their light steady rather than sharp. Nothing in the space competes for attention. Everything has found its position. The insects continue their low, woven tone beneath the silence. It no longer reads as many sounds. It feels like one continuous thread running through the grass and into the dark. Motion becomes minimal. Your body no longer adjusts itself. Earlier, small corrections happened without awareness. Shoulders settling, spine lengthening, hips redistributing weight. Now there is stillness. The position you occupy feels complete. No muscle strains. No joint asks for attention. Hands rest heavier against the bench. Fingers loosen further, their weight supported without effort. The skin along your forearms cools evenly in the night air. There is no contrast between one part of you and another. Temperature has reached equilibrium. The tree line remains steady. There is no movement among the trunks, no shifting branches. Even the smallest stir of leaves has ceased. This place feels held in suspension, not paused, simply continuous. Your jaw releases the last subtle tension. Teeth rest apart. Tongue settles low. The muscles behind your eyes soften again. A distant sound travels faintly across the open ground, so faint it barely distinguishes itself from the insect layer. It might be wind far away or something turning over in the field. It completes itself quickly and leaves no echo. Silence resumes its place. The bench beneath you feels indistinguishable from the earth below it. Support does not feel like an action. It feels like a fact. Your shoulders settle another small degree. Neck aligns naturally. Head balances easily. The weight of your body seems to sink slightly downward while remaining fully supported. The night air rests against your face and hands without movement. There is no draft, no edge of chill, only steady contact. Your eyelids grow heavier now, not closing, just less engaged. Blinking becomes slower still. Each reopening reveals the same arrangement, sky wide, trees steady, clearing quiet. Nothing has changed. Nothing needs to. Breathing softens further. Inhale, exhale, pause. There is more space between each cycle now, though you are not measuring it. The body seems content to remain in the pause for a moment longer before beginning again. The insect layer smooths even further, becoming background rather than foreground. It blends into the sense of space itself. Your chest rises gently beneath fabric, then lowers. The movement is subtle enough that it barely shifts your outline against the bench. Time feels indistinct. There are no new sounds marking minutes, no changes in light marking progress, only continuation. Your hands feel warm against the wood now, though the air remains cool. The warmth is your own, contained within your skin, not needing to move anywhere. Breath moves again. Air enters. Air leaves. There is nothing else to track. Trees remain where they are. Stars remain where they are. Ground remains steady. And you remain seated within it, fully supported, fully settled, relaxed as the night continues without interruption. Everything remains as it is. Nothing arrives to alter its shape. Nothing withdraws further. The dark has reached its settled state, even, continuous, complete. Your breathing softens again, almost imperceptibly. It no longer feels like something happening in the foreground. It becomes part of the background rhythm, like the insect tone beneath the trees, steady, present, unremarkable. Air moves in. Air moves out. Your chest rises gently, then falls. The pause after the exhale feels natural, wide enough to rest in without concern. There is no urgency in the body, no subtle anticipation of the next breath. It comes when it comes. Your shoulders sink another small fraction. The muscles along your upper back, those that once held the outline of posture, ease further. Support does not change. The bench continues to hold you evenly. The ground beneath remains firm. Yet the sense of being held grows quieter, less noticeable, because nothing in you resists it. Your head balances easily above your spine. There is no forward tilt, no effort to remain upright, just alignment that sustains itself. The night air rests against your skin without variation, not cooling further nor warming. It has found its temperature, and your body has accepted it completely. Your eyelids may feel heavier now, not pulled downward, not commanded to close, simply weighted as though the muscles that once kept them lifted have decided they no longer need to work as much. You blink. The motion is slow and unhurried. When your eyes reopen, the sky looks the same. Stars remain spaced widely. The tree line remains one continuous contour. Nothing has shifted while your eyes were closed. That steadiness registers somewhere beneath thought. Nothing changes quickly here. Nothing demands response. Breath continues, quietly filling lower ribs first. The movement is smooth, unforced, then out, releasing without sound. The pause that follows the exhale feels slightly longer than before, as though the body is comfortable in stillness. Your hands feel heavier now. Fingers rest fully open. There is no subtle tension holding them curved. The backs of your hands cool evenly in the air. Palms retain a small warmth from within your own skin. You do not adjust them. There is no need. The insect layer remains steady, neither rising nor falling. No drawing of attention. It confirms that the world continues beyond you without interruption. A distant sound occurs, faint, indistinct, perhaps a gate closing far beyond the field, perhaps something settling in the dark. It arrives softened by distance and dissolves before you can assign it meaning. Silence returns, not emptiness, just space. Your jaw loosens further. Teeth remain parted slightly, tongue rests low. The small muscles at the base of your skull soften, releasing the last trace of held awareness. Breath moves again. The rhythm feels self-sustaining now. You are no longer observing it closely. It unfolds on its own. Your chest rises less noticeably. Exhale spreads downward, softening the abdomen, easing through the ribs, lengthening without effort. The pause feels generous. You do not count it, you do not extend it. Nothing in the space has shifted. Stars hold their positions without flicker. Trees remain steady. Ground beneath you does not shift. The bench does not creak. Even the faint murmur of leaves has ceased. Stillness has become the dominant presence. Your shoulders sink one final degree. The weight of your arms feels fully supported. Elbows rest without pressure. Spine no longer self-corrects. It has found the alignment it will keep for the remainder of the evening. There is nothing left to adjust. Your breathing slows again, not dramatically, just enough that each cycle feels longer than the last. Air enters in a smooth, quiet arc. Air leaves in an even stream. The pause lingers. Your eyelids may lower slightly now, even if they do not close. Vision softens at the edges. The stars blur faintly, their light diffusing into the dark behind them. The sky feels deeper than before, not visually darker, just less defined. There is no line separating where you end and the night begins. Cool air rests against your skin. The boundary between inside and outside feels less distinct. You remain seated, fully supported, fully settled. The insect tone continues, but it feels farther away now, as though it has receded into distance without actually moving. Perhaps your attention has shifted inward. Your hands grow warmer against the wood as your awareness moves away from them. Sensation feels muted, less detailed. You no longer register the exact position of each finger. Shoulders remain heavy, neck remains easy, head balanced. No thoughts require completion. If one appears faint, indistinct, it dissolves before forming shape. There is no momentum behind it, nothing to follow. The night continues around you without interruption. Stars remain steady, trees remain steady, ground remains steady. Your breathing becomes the only noticeable motion. Even that feels smaller now. Air enters softly, barely lifting the chest. Air leaves in a slow, quiet release. The pause that follows stretches comfortably, longer than before, yet effortless. The body feels heavier against the bench, not sinking, not collapsing, simply grounded. Muscles along the spine soften again. The lower back releases any final holding. Weight distributes fully across the surface beneath you. There is nothing left to prepare for. No new sound approaches. No shift in light remains. The hour has settled into itself. Your eyelids may close now without decision, or they may remain slightly open, unfocused, receiving only tone rather than detail. Either way, the night holds steady. The sky does not change. You do not need to change. And in that widening pause, the body rests more completely than before, supported, aligned, quiet, as the night continues around you in the same steady, uninterrupted way. Night has settled fully now. Nothing in the space asks to be noticed. The sky holds its depth. The tree line remains a quiet outline. The ground beneath you does not shift. Your attention narrows on its own. There is no effort in that narrowing. It happens gradually, the way the light faded earlier, without signal, without demand. Breath continues in the background. You are not guiding it, the body feels balanced. Hands rest without definition. You no longer register the exact position of each finger. Contact has softened into something assumed. Shoulders remain low. The spine holds itself. The neck stays easy. The breath slows slightly, not because you direct it, but because nothing requires alertness now. After each exhale, there is a brief still point. Your eyelids may close fully. Darkness behind them feels wide and steady. There are no images forming there, no movement to follow. The The body feels heavier now, not weighed down, settled. The outside world continues on its own, but you are no longer tracking it. Awareness rests closer to the center of your own stillness. The body remains at ease. Nothing signals correction. Nothing suggests movement. Stillness feels stable rather than imposed. Your jaw remains soft. Teeth remain parted slightly. Tongue rests low and still. Shoulders sink another fraction. The body no longer signals any need for movement. No small adjustment suggests itself. Stillness feels stable rather than imposed. The insect tone has blended so fully into the background that you may not register it at all now. It exists but does not reach you. Night continues around you without interruption, but your awareness rests closer to the center of your own stillness. The bench beneath you feels less defined. You do not track its surface. You do not feel its edges. Support has become an assumption rather than a sensation. The sky above remains unchanged, but you no longer look toward it. Your eyes rest. Darkness behind them holds steady. Breathing slows again. Movement remains minimal. The body feels settled in a way that does not require attention. Hands are heavy, arms are heavy, shoulders are heavy but comfortable. There is nothing to correct, nothing to hold, nothing to maintain. Air moves gently through the body, and you remain seated, fully supported, fully aligned, as night continues in the same quiet, uninterrupted way. Breathing remains slow and even. You do not follow it closely now. It continues without supervision. The inhale rises gently through the lower ribs, barely lifting the chest. The exhale releases downward in a quiet, steady stream. Afterward, there is a still point that feels wide and unoccupied. Nothing fills that space. Nothing needs to. Your shoulders rest fully now. There is no trace of lift remaining in them. The muscles that once held the outline of awareness have softened completely. Arms hang with their natural weight. Elbows feel supported without pressure. The bench beneath you feels less like an object and more like continuity. There is no edge to it in your awareness. Just the existence beneath your weight, steady and unchanging. Air moves across your face with no variation in temperature. It remains constant. The body rests without adjustment. Somewhere beyond you, the night continues its own processes, insects, distant movement, trees standing in stillness, but those processes feel farther away now. Awareness has shifted inward, narrowing without effort. The darkness behind your closed eyelids feels expansive but calm. It stays constant without shift or shimmer, resting there even and steady. Your jaw loosens another fraction. Tongue rests heavily now. There is no subtle tension at the base of the throat. Breath passes easily. Inhale arrives softly. Exhale releases more fully than before. The pause afterward feels deep, not dramatic, just deeper. Your chest rises less noticeably with each cycle. Movement has become minimal. The body conserves effort. Nothing demands alertness. Hands feel heavier still. You may no longer distinguish where fingers touch wood. Sensation blends into a single, muted contact. Warmth from your palms feels contained within your own skin rather than exchanged. Your back remains aligned without instruction. The small muscles along the spine, the ones that once maintained posture, have relinquished their work. Support handles the rest. There is a sense of being suspended within, not floating, not falling, resting in a space where nothing is required. Thoughts appear faintly, then dissolve before forming shape. They no longer string together. They do not build into narrative. They pass like subtle shadows across the dark behind your eyes. Your eyelids feel fully at rest now. There is no urge to open them. Even if you did, the night would look the same. Nothing outside requires checking. Breath slows another degree. Pause. The pause feels longer than before. The body does not hurry to begin again. Your shoulders sink imperceptibly deeper. Arms feel as though gravity has increased slightly, not uncomfortable, simply grounding. The weight feels pleasant, stable. Air moves across your lips as you exhale. The sensation is faint but present, then it fades. There is less distinction between the moment of inhale and the moment of exhale. The cycle feels continuous, like a gentle tide with no sharp edges. Somewhere in the distance, a faint sound occurs, too indistinct to name. You do not fully receive it before it dissolves, absorbed by the stillness. Silence resumes. The night has stopped changing. It is complete. Hands are heavy. Arms are heavy. Legs are heavy, not rigid, not immobile, simply resting. The sense of time loosens further. There are no markers dividing 1 minute from the next. The breath cycles quietly. The pause expands gently. The body remains settled. You are not tracking the clearing anymore. You are not aware of the tree line or the stars. Your awareness rests closer to the center of your own stillness. There is nothing left to adjust. Discomfort does not arise anywhere in the body, nor does any joint hint at movement. Nothing within you asks to be noticed. Air moves quietly through the nose, down into the lungs, then leaves in a smooth, unbroken stream. The rhythm feels slower now than it did moments ago. The pause feels longer. Your head balances effortlessly. Neck muscles have released their final hold. There is no subtle forward lean, no backward tension, just equilibrium. Shoulders remain wide and dropped. Chest rises gently. Chest falls. Pause. The pause feels expansive now, long enough that you might almost forget the next breath is coming. And yet it does, softly, without effort. The breath enters again, smooth and unforced, as though it has been happening this way all along. Darkness behind your eyes feels steady and deep. With no images, nor does it flicker with thought. It holds quietly like the sky above once did. Another gentle exchange of air passes through. Pause. The body feels fully settled now, supported, aligned. Still, there is nothing left to do here, nothing left to wait for. Only the steady continuation of breath within the quiet of the night, each cycle slower than the last, each pause slightly wider, as you remain seated in complete ease and stillness. It is no longer something you follow. It moves on its own, steady and unremarkable. Air enters with little sensation, then leaves in an even release that seems to travel downward through the body before dissolving. After each exhale, there is a moment where nothing happens. That moment grows wider now. You do not measure it. You simply rest within it. Your body feels fully supported, but the feeling of support has faded into the background. The bench beneath you no longer registers as surface. It feels like extension, ground carrying weight without effort. Your arms hang naturally. Fingers remain loose. The small warmth in your palms stays contained within your own skin. Cool night air rests evenly across your face and wrists unchanged. There is nothing left to adjust. Posture sustains itself without instruction. The spine balances. The neck remains easy. The head does not tilt or correct. Breath whispers again, quietly enough that it almost seems imagined. The exhale is longer than before, smoothing outward without sound. The pause afterward opens gently and holds. You remain inside that stillness. Thoughts have thinned. If one begins to form, it loses shape before gathering detail. There is no thread to follow. Awareness rests in something simpler now, the quiet arc of breath and the soft weight of the body. Your eyelids remain closed. Darkness behind them feels steady and even. The body grows heavier in a way that feels safe. Shoulders sink a fraction deeper. The abdomen softens fully. The body requires very little. The next cycle completes itself. Somewhere far beyond your awareness, the night continues, insects, distant ground, sky, but it no longer reaches you clearly. Those elements feel remote, as though separated by distance you do not need to measure. Your awareness rests close to the center now. Close to stillness, you remain there. There is no anticipation. The next breath arrives naturally. Your jaw remains loose, tongue rests low and unmoving. The small muscles around the eyes stay soft. There is no effort anywhere in the body. Discomfort does not arise. No impulse toward movement forms. Everything remains quiet and contained. Each cycle feels slightly longer than the last. The pause feels generous. Movement of air remains steady and minimal. You do not need to follow it closely now. The body knows what to do. There is a sense of being settled within yourself, not watching this space, not tracking the sky, not listening for sound, simply resting in the steady repetition of breath and stillness. Your arms rest with a steady, comfortable heaviness, and your legs feel fully grounded. Support beneath you has become so consistent that you no longer register it as sensation. There is nowhere to go from here, and nothing waiting behind you. You remain where you are, fully supported, fully aligned, as the rhythm of breath carries you quietly through the widening stillness of the night. It no longer feels like something happening in the foreground. It moves in the background of awareness, steady and self-sustaining. Air enters gently, spreading through the lower ribs with minimal expansion. It leaves more fully than it arrives, smoothing downward through the body before dissolving. The space afterward widens again. There is a sense of resting inside that space, as though the body has discovered a place where there is no need to act. Your shoulders remain low and loose. The small stabilizing muscles along the upper back have released entirely. Arms hang with their natural weight. Hands stay open, uncurled, resting without direction. The darkness behind your eyelids feels deeper now, not darker in tone, but more expansive. It holds steady the way the sky once held steady above you. Nothing interrupts it. Breathing slows another small degree. The next inhale begins without urgency. There is no thought attached to it, no correction, no improvement. The body has reached a point where it is not trying to settle further. It is settled. If a stray thought forms, it loosens before it gathers structure. Your neck stays relaxed. The head feels balanced without effort. There is no forward drift, no backward strain. There is a sense of sinking, not downward physically, but inward, as though the edges of awareness have softened, drawing closer to the center. The opening beyond you has receded fully from focus. There is no sense of trees or sky now, only darkness and the steady movement of air within your body. Your chest rises gently, it falls more fully. The abdomen softens completely on the exhale. There is no residual holding. The pause lingers. There is comfort in that lingering. Your legs feel fully at rest. Muscles along the thighs and calves have stopped bracing entirely. Even the small readiness that once lived in them has dissolved. Breathing continues. Your awareness narrows again. You are no longer aware of the exact position of your hands. Sensation feels distant, muted. Contact beneath you remains constant, but you no longer register its details. Everything feels evenly distributed, balanced. Contained, breath flows again. The cycle is unremarkable. It feels ordinary in the most reassuring way. There is nothing dramatic in the body, nothing urgent, nothing incomplete. The pause widens slightly more. You rest there without effort. The next inhale begins softly, almost before you recognize it. Air fills the lower ribs, then rises gently. It leaves in a long, smooth release. The body does not shift. There is a quiet sense of stability now, not as sensation. As assumption, you are held, you are steady. Breathing continues in slow, even arcs. The darkness behind your eyelids feels almost weightless. It stretches without boundary. There are no images there, no shapes forming. The rhythm of breath becomes softer still. You remain seated, but the idea of being seated has faded. There is only the sense of weight resting somewhere secure. Your jaw remains loose, tongue unmoving. The small muscles around your eyes remain relaxed. Awareness feels close now, close to the center of the chest, close to the movement of air. The rest of the body feels distant but safe. Another cycle. Air enters quietly. Air leaves completely. The pause holds, you rest inside it. The body feels fully supported and entirely still. No signal of discomfort arises. No impulse toward movement gathers. Everything remains calm and quiet. Breathing slows again. The inhale begins almost imperceptibly. The exhale continues longer than expected. The pause feels deep enough that it could hold you there indefinitely. And yet the next breath begins without effort, soft, even unforced. There is nothing left to release, nothing left to settle, only the steady continuation of breath within the quiet dark, each cycle easing you further into stillness without needing direction or intention. Breath moves through you in a way that feels almost distant now. The body handles it without prompting. The rise through the ribs is restrained and unremarkable. The release that follows feels complete, smoothing downward until there is nothing left to let go of. After that release, stillness opens. It does not feel empty. It feels sufficient. Your shoulders remain fully lowered. The faint readiness that once lived beneath them has dissolved. Arms rest with their natural weight, secure and grounded. Fingers no longer register individually, they feel like part of a single, quiet whole. There is a softness along the back of your neck that was not present earlier. Muscles that once maintained subtle awareness have stepped aside. The head balances as though gravity itself has adjusted to meet you gently. Time continues to lose its edges. There is no sense of progression, no feeling that you are moving towards something specific. The night no longer feels like an environment, it feels like background continuity. Your awareness feels lighter at the edges now. The outline of your body has softened further. The space between your skin and the surrounding dark feels less defined, as though both share the same stillness. A subtle warmth lingers in your chest, not heat, not pressure, simply presence. Without guiding, the body feels complete. There is no adjustment forming in your hips or knees, no subtle request from the lower back. Everything rests in a configuration that requires nothing further. Another gentle movement of air passes through you. It feels smaller than before, as though the body has discovered that it needs very little. The release afterward feels long and unhurried. Stillness follows. It holds you there. Your jaw remains loose, lips resting softly together or slightly parted. The tongue lies settled and still. Even the space behind your eyes feels unoccupied. Thought no longer gathers with clarity. If something begins to rise, it dissolves before becoming language. Awareness returns easily to the quiet rhythm moving through your chest. There is no sense of effort anywhere. Gravity feels supportive rather than demanding. The weight of your limbs feels reassuring, not restrictive. Stillness now feels dominant, but gently, wide enough to rest in without expectation. Your chest rises less than it did minutes ago. The body conserves motion. It seems to understand that it no longer needs to hold itself ready. There is a faint sense of drifting inward, not falling, not floating, simply settling deeper into what is already steady. The quiet continues to expand around that settling, existing, consistent, and unchanged. Your shoulders sink a fraction further, even though there is nowhere left to go. The sensation of sinking feels internal now, a softening of boundaries rather than a shift in position. Another breath passes through, it feels unremarkable. The release afterward feels complete. The stillness that follows seems to widen once more. You remain inside it, unhurried and undisturbed. There is nothing left to prepare for. No signal that anything is about to change. Only the gentle continuation of breath and the steady weight of the body resting securely. Awareness has narrowed to something very simple now. Sensation has softened to a few quiet elements: the movement of air, the grounded heaviness in your limbs, the steady depth of darkness behind closed eyes. Everything else has fallen away. Another quiet cycle unfolds. It begins softly. It ends more slowly. The pause that follows feels like a wide, open space that does not need to close. You rest there without anticipation. There is a sense that the body could remain exactly like this indefinitely, supported, aligned, undisturbed. The night beyond you remains unchanged, though it no longer registers as separate from your own stillness. The distinction between inner and outer has faded into a shared quiet. The body remains still. The quiet deepens not by changing, but by becoming more complete. And you remain here, suspended gently within that completeness, as awareness thins and rest approaches without force, without announcement, without any need for you to do anything at all. The quiet no longer feels like something around you. It feels like the condition you are resting inside. There is no contrast between movement and stillness now. Motion has become so slight that it blends into the background of awareness. The body rests with a completeness that does not ask for improvement. Your weight feels steady and unargued with. Gravity holds you in a way that feels cooperative rather than demanding. There is nothing in your posture that needs correction. The sense of being seated has softened into something simpler, a quiet certainty of support. Breath continues without your involvement, without drawing attention to itself, not asking to be deepened or slowed. It moves in small, even passages that barely shift the outline of your body. Between those passages, stillness expands. That stillness feels familiar now, comfortable. There is no internal commentary about how long it lasts, no subtle check to see what comes next. The body remains suspended in that pause without urgency. Your awareness has narrowed to something very small and very steady. There is a gentle warmth in the center of your chest, balanced by cool air resting along your skin. Those two sensations coexist without contrast. They do not compete for attention. They simply remain. Muscles along your back have released entirely. The spine does not feel held upright anymore. It feels balanced by design. Shoulders remain low and wide. Arms feel secure where they rest. Another quiet movement of air passes through. It feels softer than before. The release that follows feels longer. The stillness afterward seems to widen again. Thought has loosened completely. There are no forming sentences inside your mind. If a fragment appears, it dissolves before it can gather meaning. Awareness stays close to the simplest sensations. The darkness behind your eyes feels deep and even. Time has thinned to almost nothing. There is no sense of moving forward, no sense of returning, only continuation. Breath passes through the body in a restrained, unremarkable way. The chest rises just enough to confirm life. It falls more completely. Afterward, the body rests in a quiet suspension that feels increasingly natural. Your hands feel fully grounded. There is no tension in the fingers. There is no readiness in the wrists. The legs remain supported and secure without pressure in the joints. Everything rests. The pause after each breath now feels like the dominant experience rather than the movement itself. You remain within that pause without measuring it. There is no anticipation attached to what follows. Air enters without demand. It leaves more slowly. Stillness opens again. The body feels distant in a safe way, not detached, not absent, simply quiet. There is no desire to move, no subtle readiness forming beneath the surface. Even the idea of movement feels remote. The quiet expands in a way that does not change anything external. It deepens only in your awareness. The body seems to sink slightly inward with each release, settling into a steadiness that feels permanent. It feels almost secondary now, a background rhythm rather than the center of focus. The space between breaths feels broader than the breaths themselves. You remain in that space. There is no need to follow the next cycle. It arrives on its own. The body has grown so still that even small internal movements feel muted. The subtle lift of the ribs barely registers. The release afterward blends seamlessly into the surrounding quiet. Your jaw remains slack. The muscles around your eyes remain soft. The skin across your forehead rests smooth and undisturbed. Nothing signals alertness. Nothing suggests vigilance. There is a sense that the day has fully dissolved. No memory presses forward. No unfinished thought lingers at the edge of awareness. The boundary between your body and the surrounding night has thinned almost entirely. Cool air and internal warmth exist in the same quiet field. The distinction between inner and outer has softened beyond notice. There is no effort required to stay here, no technique to maintain. Only this steady drifting toward deeper rest. Breath becomes smaller. The release becomes smoother. The pause becomes longer. The body rests more completely with each cycle. There is no need to move forward, no need to return anywhere. Only this widening stillness, carrying you gently toward the place where awareness loosens entirely and sleep begins without announcement. The quiet deepens in a way that does not change anything around you, yet alters how everything feels within. The body has stopped holding even the smallest readiness. There is no subtle brace in the abdomen, no hidden tension along the spine. Weight rests evenly. Awareness remains narrow and close. Breath moves in such a restrained way that it almost feels optional, though it continues steadily and without interruption. The chest lifts slightly, then lowers more completely, leaving behind a widening space that feels easy to inhabit. There is no impulse to fill that space. The body has become simple. Arms rest with a steady heaviness that feels reassuring. Legs remain grounded and still. Even the small sensations that once marked contact with the surface beneath you have faded into assumption. Nothing requires confirmation. Another quiet movement of air passes through. It feels softer than the one before. The release seems to carry downward, dissolving into stillness rather than ending sharply. Afterward, there is a moment that feels unbounded by time. You rest inside that unbounded moment. Thought no longer forms even in fragments. There is no internal commentary about how you are resting or whether you are close to sleep. That evaluation has disappeared entirely. Only sensation remains. A gentle warmth in the center of your chest, steady heaviness in your limbs, a wide field of quiet behind closed eyes. There is less motion in the ribs now. The abdomen softens fully with each release. The space afterward stretches slightly longer than before. There is no urgency to begin again, and yet it begins, softly, without announcement. The body seems to sink another subtle degree inward, as though awareness has moved closer to the center of gravity. The outline of your form feels indistinct. There is no need to know where one limb ends and another begins. Support remains constant. Gravity feels gentle. It holds you in suspension, not demanding attention, simply existing as the dominant state. You feel light. Stillness follows and lingers. You remain in that lingering without concern. There is a sense now that movement has become optional in every part of you. The idea of adjusting your hands or shifting your shoulders feels distant and unnecessary. Nothing calls you back to alertness. The night has ceased presenting itself as environment. It has become condition. Breath continues at a pace that feels natural and slow. There is less rise in the chest, less sensation in the throat, more space afterward. Time feels thinner. Moments do not separate clearly from one another. There is only the quiet arc of breath and the depth of stillness that surrounds it. Another gentle cycle unfolds. The body remains entirely at rest. There is no signal from your joints, no flicker of readiness in your muscles, no sense that anything remains unfinished. Awareness drifts inward again. The warmth in your chest feels softer now, less defined. The coolness on your skin feels distant and unimportant. Both exist without contrast. Your existence continues quietly, almost without your noticing, without drawing attention. The space feels like a wide, calm expanse where nothing needs to happen. You remain inside that expanse. There is no effort in staying here, no technique, no correction. The body feels fully surrendered to rest. Shoulders remain heavy, arms remain secure, legs remain grounded and still. The surface beneath you feels assumed and unquestioned. Stillness follows. It holds. You do not anticipate the next movement. When it arrives, it feels gentle and distant, as though happening somewhere deeper within the body rather than at its surface. There is a sense now that awareness itself is thinning. Edges soften, boundaries blur. The quiet becomes the primary experience. The body feels heavier and more contained. Nothing in you seeks motion. Nothing in you reaches outward. The pause between breaths widens again, though you are not counting. It feels safe to remain there, suspended in that space where nothing presses forward. Another cycle begins. It unfolds softly. It settles completely. The quiet afterward seems almost infinite. You remain in it without fear, without expectation. There is no need to check whether you are awake or asleep. That distinction has begun to lose meaning. Awareness rests in a place where both states feel close together. The body continues. It continues to rest. It continues to sink gently inward with each release. The quiet grows more complete. Language has faded from the mind. Sensation has simplified to a few steady elements: weight, warmth, air, stillness. Everything else has dissolved. Another gentle breath moves through. It leaves behind a pause that feels deeper than any before it. There is nothing left to prepare for, nothing left to release. Only this widening stillness, carrying you softly toward the threshold where awareness loosens entirely and sleep takes over without effort. Awareness has grown very quiet now. There is no clear sense of where the body begins or where the surrounding night would end. Support remains beneath you, steady and unquestioned, though its edges are no longer distinct. The idea of being seated has softened into something more general, a quiet certainty of being held. Air moves in a restrained way, almost blending with the stillness rather than interrupting it. The release that follows feels complete, smoothing downward through the body until there is nothing left to let go. You remain inside it without checking how long it lasts. Your shoulders feel settled beyond adjustment. The subtle muscular readiness that once kept posture alert has dissolved entirely. Arms rest with natural weight, neither rigid nor slack, simply grounded. The surface beneath them is assumed rather than sensed. A quiet warmth lingers at the center of your chest. Cool air rests lightly across your skin. There is no contrast between those sensations now. They coexist in the same steady field. Another gentle breath passes through. It feels smaller than before. The release afterward lingers a little longer, leaving behind a suspension that feels open and unpressured. There is no need to anticipate what follows. The next cycle begins when it begins. Time feels less structured here. There are no markers dividing one moment from the next. The rhythm within your body has slowed to a pace that does not demand tracking. Awareness narrows again. The outline of your limbs has softened further. You no longer feel the exact angle of your elbows or the position of your knees. Weight remains, but shape has faded. Nothing calls you back outward. No sound asks to be interpreted. No thought gathers with enough clarity to hold. You are not guiding it. That space holds you in a way that feels secure, not empty. There is a sense now that gravity has become cooperative. Your body does not resist it. There is no subtle lift in the shoulders, no hidden tension along the spine. Everything has settled into alignment that requires no maintenance. You stay there without effort. Awareness feels close to the center now, as though the outer edges of perception have folded inward. The night beyond you has dissolved from experience. There is no image of trees or sky, no sense of clearing or horizon, only quiet and weight. Your jaw rests loose. The muscles at the base of your skull remain soft. Even the tiny movements behind your eyelids have ceased. The next movement of air feels faint. It passes without drawing attention. The release afterward leaves behind a deeper quiet than before. You remain suspended within it. There is no expectation attached to what comes next. The breath resumes in its own time. It feels lighter, more distant, less defined. The body seems to require less motion with each cycle. The chest lifts only slightly. The abdomen softens fully. The space afterward grows more comfortable. You rest inside that comfort. There is no impulse toward movement, no subtle preparation in the joints, no tightening beneath the surface. Everything remains quiet. Awareness thins at the edges, softening further. The boundary between inner and outer has nearly dissolved. Cool air and internal warmth exist without contrast. There is no line dividing them. The rhythm within your body feels slow and unremarkable. The pause after each release now feels like the dominant state. You remain in that pause easily. The next movement of air begins softly, almost imperceptibly. It completes itself without urgency. The body remains completely supported. There is nothing left to correct, nothing left to prepare. The idea of sequence feels distant. You are no longer moving through time in a linear way. The breath cycles quietly, but even that rhythm feels secondary to the surrounding stillness. Your arms feel secure and grounded. Your legs feel stable and unmoving. The spine balances without engagement. There is no internal dialogue, no narrative forming, only sensation, weight, warmth, quiet. The body rests deeper within itself. There is a growing sense that awareness is loosening its grip on form. Edges blur, boundaries soften. The next breath feels faint, as though happening somewhere deeper inside rather than at the surface of the body. It completes itself fully. The pause afterward feels wide and unbounded. You remain inside that unbounded space without hesitation. There is no concern about what follows, no need to monitor the rhythm. The body handles itself. Another small movement of air unfolds. It is gentle, it fades. Stillness expands again. You rest within it. The sensation of being a distinct shape in space has diminished. There is only a sense of presence, steady and grounded, resting within quiet. It feels natural, unforced. You remain suspended there. There is nothing to reach for, nothing to release. The body has surrendered entirely to rest. Shoulders remain loose. Arms remain secure. Legs remain quiet. The head balances effortlessly. Another breath arrives softly. It leaves slowly. The pause that follows feels deep enough to dissolve into. You remain there, awareness softened almost beyond definition. Movement blends into rest, rest gives way to movement, both unfolding in quiet continuity. Everything feels complete. Everything feels settled. And within that widening stillness, awareness loosens further, gently approaching the threshold where sleep begins without signal, without effort, without announcement. The quiet does not deepen anymore. Awareness feels almost translucent now, as though it has thinned enough that very little passes through it. The body rests without commentary. There is no internal checking of comfort, no subtle evaluation of position. Weight exists, support exists. Nothing else asks to be known. Another gentle movement of air occurs somewhere within you. It is so restrained that it barely registers as motion. When it completes, the stillness that follows feels seamless, uninterrupted. There is no contrast between the two. The pause holds steady. It does not feel like waiting. It feels like resting in something wide and undisturbed. Your limbs feel fully settled in a way that does not change. The arms remain grounded without pressure. The legs feel secure without tension. Even the faint sense of skin against air has softened into neutrality. Breath continues quietly in the background of that neutrality. It no longer feels central. It no longer defines the rhythm. Stillness defines it. Another subtle cycle unfolds, and the release afterward seems to dissolve directly into the surrounding quiet without edge. Awareness drifts inward again, not falling, not moving, simply softening. The idea of time feels distant now. There is no clear beginning to one moment or ending to another. The sequence has blurred into continuity. No thoughts form, no images arise. The darkness behind your closed eyes feels even and complete. There is nothing left to follow. The body remains supported without sensation of boundaries. The surface beneath you feels assumed rather than touched. Gravity feels gentle and steady. Another quiet movement of air passes through. It finishes completely, feeling almost indistinguishable from sleep. You remain there, balanced on the edge of awareness, and the body rests fully surrendered. There is no need to move forward, no need to return. Only this calm suspension, widening and widening, until even the sense of being aware begins to loosen. And in that loosening, rest gathers fully, not as an event, not as a transition, but as the natural continuation of everything that has already settled. The body rests without outline. There is very little left to notice now, not because anything has disappeared, but because nothing requires tracking. Air moves quietly somewhere beneath awareness. A small rise, a softer release. And after that, a pause wide enough to rest inside. Support remains, not as something you keep checking, but as something steady enough to be assumed. The sense of place has softened into atmosphere, bench, tree line, sky. They no longer arrive as separate things. They rest together in one continuous condition. Thought does not organize itself now. If something begins to form, it loosens before it gathers language. Nothing builds, nothing carries forward. The body stays settled. Shoulders remain low, jaw easy, hands resting without defined shape. Air continues its quiet exchange. The release feels longer than the arrival. The stillness afterward feels broader than the release. You remain inside that stillness without measuring it. There is no sense of moving towards something, no sense of returning, only continuation. Awareness feels closer to its center now. Edges soften, boundaries blur gently. The distinction between inside and outside carries less meaning. Cool air rests against skin. Warmth rests within the chest. Both exist in the same quiet field. Another small movement of air passes through. It completes itself fully. The pause afterward feels sufficient. There is nothing left to prepare for, nothing left to settle. Gravity feels cooperative now. It holds without demand. The bench beneath you no longer registers as surface. Support has become a fact rather than a sensation. Air moves again, quieter than before. The release seems to dissolve directly into stillness. The body feels heavier in a way that is reassuring. Arms secure, legs grounded, spine balanced without effort. The darkness behind closed eyes feels wide and steady. No images form there. No movement draws attention. Time feels thinner. Moments no longer separate clearly from one another. Only this gentle repetition. Air enters softly. Air leaves more completely. The pause lingers. You rest there without anticipation. There is no need to follow the next cycle. It begins on its own. The body requires very little now. Muscles have released their last subtle readiness. Nothing within you signals correction. Nothing reaches outward. Another quiet release. Another widening pause. The quiet does not deepen anymore. It remains steady, complete. If sleep comes now, it won't come with announcement. There will be no boundary to cross. Only the gentle extension of what is already here, and nothing more is required. The clearing continues as it always has. Its rhythm remains. You do not need to follow it. You are already within it. the night gathers. The quiet holds, and the rest will carry itself.